I've got a few questions that I've prepared for the panelists, but essentially, I'd really like your questions to drive the conversation. So, Jacques, wherever you are, and others, please, in the tab that says Ask a Question, send me your questions. Let's get your voice in the conversation, and let's not keep it to just my questions for this conversation. So, maybe, Stephen, let me just go back to you because we've heard your voice, and let's bring your voice back in. Can you just briefly describe what is Absa's theory of change? That's the first part of it. And then the second one is, talk to me about how do you measure success? What are the metrics that you've put on the scoreboard that give you a sense of whether we're making progress or not?
Nozipo, thank you very much. And sincere thanks to Dr. Pumlani on that amazing storyboard that he put out. I think we're deliberate in inviting Dr. Pumlani here to help set the scene of the complexity of what it means to use entrepreneurship as a social construct. So we are saying as Absa, we would like to invest in entrepreneurship education in high school as a catalyst to addressing youth unemployment. So the way we want to address youth unemployment is to release out of high school young people that know that entrepreneurship is an option. I think we are a generation that was told, go to school, you'll get a job.
Yeah.
And we didn't create enough corporations to accommodate a number of these young people that we promised that when they go to school, they will get jobs. So we were saying, maybe the methodology of jobs that we cannot quantify is the wrong one. And we just want to be part of a new social change, new social construct of saying maybe entrepreneurship education is a catalyst for four things. Somebody who's got an entrepreneurial mindset is a problem solver.
Yeah.
Meaning that they can take about any opportunity that is available to them. They can create opportunities for themselves. We also found that entrepreneurship education enables an individual to pursue education up to the highest level. And so it shouldn't be an equation that says you get entrepreneurship education, you become an entrepreneur, but you just become a problem solver. You find mechanisms and ways to make a living, to survive, and to create products and solutions. So our theory of change is entrepreneurship in higher education, in high school, is going to be the transformation that we need for the next phase of our journey. And we are spending our money investing in that particular paradigm at the moment.
Thank you very much. And again, it's already challenging a lot of the narrative. As you say, many of us grew up in a generation where the primary focus was getting a job. And listening to Pumlani saying, if you focus at tertiary, it's too late because the pressure from the family and the community is, when are you getting that job? So how do we decouple and deconstruct that narrative to say we need to be looking at a much earlier age, and what does that look like and what impact does that have? So I'll come back to you with more questions, Stephen. Let me go to Anastasia with the following question. When this panel was put together, one of the beautiful uses of language was intergenerational inclusion. And I love these big, chunky terms. What does it mean to you? So when you see intergenerational inclusion, what does it mean to you? And maybe you can comment on how do we move people beyond just getting a job for life to creating legacy businesses that have generational capability? What are your thoughts on that?
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity to come and talk about entrepreneurship, which really matters in today's world. As a scholar, obviously, I had to search what intergenerational inclusion simply means. And I'm not going to be scholastic and explain it in a difficult manner, but it's basically the involvement of all people of all ages in the entrepreneurial activities. So in this case, we look at the older people and the younger people. And of course, you can look at intergenerational inclusion from different perspectives. Firstly, it's just all of us in the room, according to the different age groups that we're in, participating in entrepreneurship. And the other aspect of it, which is really close to my heart, is when you take it in the context of family businesses.
Right.
Now you are looking at how the different generations within one family are actually passing on the entrepreneurial activities. And something that is really a little bit behind in our context, where a lot of family businesses are struggling because there isn't proper succession planning. And it all goes back to intergenerational inclusion. And when we talk about the intergenerational inclusion, we shouldn't forget the diversity within this different cohort and the kind of interventions that they need. I actually like how we started off the presentation, that not all people should be approached differently. So as we are advocating that everyone should be part and parcel of this entrepreneurship journey, so then we need to understand the kind of interventions that they need, the diversity that they actually bring to the table that will help to advance entrepreneurship. And the other thing that we can also include in the conversation is the intra-generational activities.
Right.
That as much as we are focusing on passing on this entrepreneurial activities to other generations, but what is it that is happening currently? So you cannot just be futuristic without diagnosing what is happening and the intra-generational activities, which I think today's conversations is really all about that. What is it that we are doing today? And what we are doing today is to try and understand what is it that entrepreneurs need. Coming back to your second question, in terms of helping individuals to transition from just doing everyday basic entrepreneurship to maybe thinking about high growth ventures.
Yes.
So we also need to understand the motives of entrepreneurs, right? So there are individuals whose main mission or motive is to just run that business, and we need to acknowledge it as a serious business. So when they start, others would argue that they started out of necessity because they didn't get a job. But once they get a job, they actually outgrow the necessity, they become the actual business, and their intention is not to grow, and their intention is just to be that kind of a business. And we do have individuals who, when they are in the entrepreneurial activity, now they think about growing, and that is where we need to apply the diagnostics tools that we just spoke about. And I like this focus because coming on to entrepreneurship with a blanket approach, it doesn't really work. So you need to understand what are the ambitions of this person who moved from, some in cases are operating from informality perspective, and now you are bringing them into the formal sector, which is absolutely different from how they've been running their businesses. The first thing is, all of a sudden, the networks that they used to have in their informal way of doing business are no longer accessible. And you are introducing them to a platform where the networks, again, are so exclusive that they can't penetrate. So that, again, is another issue that you need to prepare this person who is about to grow. And you think about the system level challenges. When I was operating my small business, I didn't have to worry about tax. I didn't have to worry about having my idea, justified and registered. If it's a product, it needs to go for lab testing and approved. And all of a sudden, I have this complexity of issues that I need to address. So this is where you see the role of intermediaries come into place. And I'm so privileged today that we have NPOs in the room, that they act as institutional entrepreneurs to help the entrepreneurs to scaffold through from the informality to formality, from just being a basic entrepreneur to being a high growth entrepreneur.
And what I'm hearing you say, Anastasia, which I think is so powerful, is that as you talk about the motives of the entrepreneurship, of the entrepreneur rather, it is also about making sure that for those who want a pathway to formality, that that pathway does exist. And for those who are just building survivalist businesses, that the conditions remain conducive for them to thrive in that. And I think it's both and not exclusively one or the other.
Yes.
But let me test some of that with you, Ian, because we know that there are a range of different models to support entrepreneurship. And I think we could scan this room and get different theories of change in terms of what it is that we need to do. Through the work that you have done, what has stood out for you as the most effective models that ensure that entrepreneurs are building sustainable businesses, growing businesses, that should they want to transition from informality to formality, that option is there?
No, good question. And I think when we speak about models, I think we mustn't let past precedent limit us, because it's limited really by, I think, the extent of our imagination. I think there could be hundreds and thousands of different kind of models, and I think that really is the main point between how we approach entrepreneurial development. It's really a very customized and very tailored approach, and I think it is definitely all about understanding where the person, the individual, or where the business is in their growth cycle. One needs to decide, are you focusing on the individual? And we heard in the keynote about focusing at a school level, and that's very much about the individual. If someone's still at ideation stage, that could well be also about the individual. And then it's about working with that person and helping them to fulfill their ambitions and doing a gap analysis around their own personal capabilities. And then one starts to move up the value chain really to where now there's a business, ideation has taken place, there's a concept, but the concept is having to be fleshed out. And I think there now you're starting to switch and you're starting to change and you're moving into holistic dealing with not just one person anymore, but with probably 2 or 3 entrepreneurs as a partnership. And that's a different dynamic to working with an individual, because part of that is how do you get them to collaborate together? What are their complementary skills? And it becomes a little bit like sometimes mediating a marriage, because that's not something that always works out from a personality dynamic, and that's very important. And then one can move, up to later stage, where they sort of post-revenue and now they're starting to scale. And where we've found the most success in that is to work in thematic areas so that you actually have a competency in the actual area that they are working in, be it education, technology, edtech, be it biotechnology, be it fintech. And actually bringing to bear expertise in that area. So you're not only bringing general business skills, marketing, finance, entrepreneurial skills to bear, you're actually adding value to the domain. You're bringing domain expertise to the table. And that's been incredibly important for us, especially with scale-ups, is bringing an element of deep understanding of that technology. We're working in technology and innovation, that technology and innovation area, and often just an understanding of the demand side, the market side. We sometimes find entrepreneurs that hit on a great idea and they're completely hell-bent on taking that idea to market without really understanding that is there a demand for what they're doing. And, in the early days of our fintech work that we actually did with Barclays, before it became Absa again, with Barclays Rise, was actually trying to line those entrepreneurs and those entrepreneurial ideas up with something where there actually was a market pain point or a market demand. And we got a lot of people to actually pivot and change what they were doing, because they were great entrepreneurs, they had great ideas, they had great entrepreneurial drive, but there was never going to be a buyer for their product. And I think, so being able to get them to change because you understand the market and the demand side is an important role one can play in an entrepreneur's life.
So Ian, I'm hearing a lot of wonderful things, but 2 that I want to highlight. First, meet the entrepreneur where they're at and understand the life cycle of where their business or idea is at. But also, if you're going to support entrepreneurs, it might be good to think about the entire life cycle, including access to markets, because that's where the rubber hits the road, if I'm hearing you correctly. It comes back to the question we put to Principal Childcare earlier, to say, after all is said and done, if these young people don't have an opportunity to either go into jobs or go into entrepreneurship, so what? And I'm hearing you articulate that. I'm going to circle back on that, but let me come to Fiona. And Fiona, I know you've been listening, and as an entrepreneur, I want you to take what you've heard, reflect on your own journey as an entrepreneur, and then maybe answer this question for me. What resources or assistance was most valuable to you? As we talk about different models and what we should be doing for entrepreneurs, if you think about your journey, what mattered the most? And when did it matter the most? what was happening in your entrepreneurial journey for that resource or that level of assistance to actually be the thing that was most impactful for you?
Good evening, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for this question. I've been hearing everyone saying all this stuff about business, and for me, what's interesting about my journey is that Absa came through for me, and let me elaborate how it came through for me. I grew up with my grandmother, and I was just assisting her with selling snacks and veggies in my primary level. And when I go to high school, I used to, I'm a SASA beneficiary, and I used to save up that money for my future, for my tuition fee, and I also managed to come up with my friends and suggest that we should save up at least R2 a day to help us to apply for university, so that when we go out there, we do not ask our poor grandmothers to help us to apply. So that thing, it was just a hobby for me. I didn't realize that I'm an entrepreneur who's always looking for solutions. When I was in university, I was into network marketing. I also realized that in varsity we have a lot of students. In a venue that we were attending, we used to accommodate around 600 people. And I was like, these young girls need to look nice during church services and other things. And I decided to sell heels, I was like, in this room full of 600 students, 10 can be my customers. And it was a success. But I didn't realize that business is something noble that I can study. So I studied psychology and criminology, but at the same time, it came to be a solution for me, because when I was after studying, I realized that I'm depressed after three months of unemployment. Remember, I'm from primary, high school, university. Now I'm unemployed for 3 months, and it was quite depressing for me. So I came up with the idea of being a farmer, in getting into poultry. And for me, it was not a train smash to execute that idea, because I just grew up doing this entrepreneurship thing. But Absa came through for me, where I was exhausted of always coming up with solutions where I see problems. I was tired of fixing leaking roofs and other things. Absa came up for me. The most important thing they did for me is to enroll me into mentorship programs.
Sure.
That helped me a lot. It built the character. It helped me to carry myself as a professional businesswoman. Prof. Anastasia, she's one of professors that facilitated the personal mastery and the business development plan that I was enrolled by Absa, and it was through Gordon Institute of Science. And that helped me a lot to develop myself as a businesswoman, because I was just interested in selling, in buying and selling, cost of sale, profit. For me, I didn't have that big mind of saying that I need to carry myself as a businesswoman, I need to be compliant and all those kind of things. So it helped me a lot to be able to be ready for opportunities, to be ready for challenges and risks that comes with business.
Sure. Can we give Fiona a round of applause, please? And Ian, I'm going to come back to you, because I have a question to you about the characteristics of an entrepreneur. And based on what you've just heard, I'm keen to hear your reflection on what you've just heard from Fiona. But before we get there, I want to quickly jump to Stephen. And I'm going to ask for short, sharp answers, because I then want to go to what's coming through on the portal here. Stephen, I think it was earlier this year, you wrote an article for the Sowetan where you spoke about how South African entrepreneurship is failing because of the environment within which it is trying to thrive, and that the environment is not supportive at all. What, in your view, needs to be done to revive entrepreneurship in the country? And I would imagine that as you were talking about the environment, you are particularly also looking at the policy environment. Talk to us a little bit about what are your suggestions on the back of that observation?
I would focus, Nozipo, on the environment in high school.
Yeah.
Because I think for me, that's the one I'm particularly interested in. I think Ian will be able to talk about the environment in which entrepreneurs are operating. Every time we think about entrepreneurship being integrated in high school, the one reason is given to us is that we don't have teachers that are qualified to do it. The practical side is daunting.
Yeah.
We don't have the infrastructure or the resources. And also, it has never been inculcated in a number of South Africans that it is a new pathway. So our mindset in our own family structures, entrepreneurship is not an option, is something you get along the way. Whereas what I'm saying is there could be a mindset that we can develop much earlier to address that. The second one you heard from Vodacom. Vodacom is saying we are part of the centers of excellence.
Yes.
And we are bringing our expertise being technology. And therefore we are putting on campus technology assistants to help deliver the technology services. And therefore now we're starting to solve some of those problems. The only thing that we need is for the government of South Africa to say entrepreneurship in high school is going to be our policy. Once they give us the room to implement entrepreneurship as a policy, we as corporate South Africa are prepared. Remember, Nozipo, we are a bank.
Yeah.
We want to be a bank for entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
We want more businesses to be established so that we can thrive. If there are no businesses that are established, we can't thrive as a business. Secondly, we want more young people being productive, doing something that is meaningful to them, and entrepreneurship is one such opportunity. In the article, what I wanted to quiz, I suggested a manifesto at the end. I said I yearn for the Minister of Basic Education, when they announced this matric results, one of the things they announced is through the mini enterprise implemented in schools, X number of businesses were started. Entrepreneurial mindset of this group has improved by X. Entrepreneurship skills have been trained to Y. And there's a guarantee that 10% of the 700,000 matriculants every year are likely to take entrepreneurship action.
Sure.
And that will give us a simple thing like 210,000 jobs in a space of 3 years. So for me, firstly, the one I'm yearning for, as a corporation, we're saying we want to partner with the basic education, but we want the pronouncement that education for entrepreneurship is a part and parcel of the basic education system.
And as you speak about that policy stance, you remind me of a quote, and I can't remember the author, but I think it's Cortez, and essentially saying that there are moments in life where you've got to burn your boats at the beach. Correct. And that's just basically the idea that we're drawing our line in the sand and we're going to do this. And that's the decisiveness that I'm hearing you talk about, and the challenge for the government and the department in particular to burn their boats at the beach when it comes to entrepreneurship. Anastasia, we're in Sandton, close enough, Modderfontein, and we're talking about all of these amazing things, entrepreneurial ecosystems, and yet there will be people in this room who are saying, but outside of this room, outside of those who are connected, the real people who need to access these support ecosystems aren't able to. How do we ensure that entrepreneurial ecosystems, that we raise awareness about them in the first instance, but actually that they become increasingly accessible to young people who are not in the urban centers, and we're able to actually mitigate our urban bias, which oftentimes creeps in opportunities and conversations like these?
Yes, absolutely. And I think one of the challenges with the ecosystem approach in terms of how it was introduced to us it was mostly top-down approach.
Yeah.
So it was developed without enough data to say to us, this is how the ecosystem is supposed to support the entrepreneur. So I am so grateful that from the keynote, we got to learn that there is work that is being done now to come against a top-down approach where someone can just sit and decide, okay, an entrepreneur need X and Y, and therefore pull up people together to support the entrepreneur without understanding what are those basic needs of the entrepreneur within the ecosystem. And because of this top-down approach, a lot of entrepreneurs are already excluded. They don't know what is actually happening within the ecosystem. Sometimes you will think, is an ecosystem a building that I have to go to? So there are varying interpretations of what an ecosystem is. But as much as we think that they are excluded from what we will call as a formal ecosystem, entrepreneurs in townships, they have their own ecosystems
Yes.
that they are using, to drive entrepreneurship. And we can call this shadow entrepreneurial ecosystem. So with the recent study that we conducted, we realized that entrepreneurs are able to orchestrate resources amongst themselves. They know that customers are very important. They are the significant part of the ecosystem. Access to market is important. And shockingly, the very same entrepreneur who is selling the same goods as I'm selling, that person is a significant member of my ecosystem. So in an ideal world, you'll see that person as a competitor that you don't need to have a conversation with to start off with. But entrepreneurs in townships, they are relying on people that are in the same industries as them to obtain resources. For example, this one woman spoke about the fact that she's selling chickens, and she got this big opportunity to supply chickens, and she didn't have chickens. So guess what she did? She went to the next business and loaned some chicken. And then from there, she was able to supply. But in the real world, it doesn't make sense to us. And this guy who is in the entertainment industry, he says to us, I don't have equipment, but who is the next person who has the equipment? The very same competitor that I work with, and they rely on them, approach them and say, can I have your resources? So then you see that already there is an ecosystem that exists. And when we bring our own ecosystem that we think that is suited for the entrepreneur, then they talk about the disconnect. They say that government does not know what they need, or some of the actors, they don't know what they need because already they have an ecosystem that is active, that is alive, that we call it is in the shadows. So the important thing is for us to go to the entrepreneurs in the townships because they will not come, to the big cities. So one thing about an entrepreneurial, a township business is that it is embedded within the community.
Yeah.
So the community is the livelihood of the business. It makes the business exist. So this business is not going to come to Sentin.
Yeah.
So then we need to map out our own ecosystem based on what the entrepreneurs in the townships are doing. So if we don't go to them, then there will never be a point where they are part and parcel of the ecosystem and not destroy the connections and the interlinkages that they've already formulated to deal with the institutional voids that we have in entrepreneurship.
So what I'm hearing you say, and yes, I think that that definitely deserves a round of applause. What I'm hearing you say is you see what you're looking for. And so if you go into the township expecting to see nothing, no activity, the absence of entrepreneurial activity, that's the mindset that you've engaged with, and therefore that's what you'll see. But I'm also hearing you saying, are we asking the question, whose ecosystem is it anyway? And I think that's quite important because it helps us differentiate and make sure that we don't impose certain models and outlooks without first understanding the environment within which we're operating. So, Ian, I'm not trying to be difficult, but I might just be difficult here. Pumlani said to us, and I actually wrote it down because I thought it was so provocative. He says, there is no science to identifying entrepreneurs, right? Then Fiona was talking about her journey, and what I heard was a person who sees opportunity, a person who's open to reinvention, a person who's curious, who's open-minded, always willing to learn, and takes every opportunity as it comes up. And I could go on and on with that list. So the question to you is, one, do you agree with Pumlani? So I just want to make sure there's a clash there. So do you agree with Pumlani that you cannot identify entrepreneurs? But more importantly, what do you think are the defining characteristics of a successful entrepreneur?
Look, I think Pumlani's doing some great work, so I don't want to publicly disagree with him. I actually want to collaborate with him after this. So it's a very loaded question, so you're setting me up. But I think, you used a key word now. You used the word science, and you quoted him, and I remembered what he said word for word. And before my time in moving into impact work and entrepreneurial work and not-for-profit work, I spent 13 years in the creative industry. And that was my segue. I was the financial person, and I understood that creativity isn't science either. It's actually, the closest thing I could relate it to was, it's actually magic. Creativity, making a piece of music, making a beautiful movie. And I think, looking at entrepreneurial characteristics, the reason he can't find scientific data points is actually it's not a science. It's closer to a creativity. It's an ever-moving thing. But I'm going to have a go anyway. And I'm telling you, I think both in my personal experience, having mentored a few very, very successful entrepreneurs, and all the way the whole value chain through from startups to scale-ups. I think the obvious one is resilience. It's really tough out there. If someone isn't a resilient person, just in their personal nature and that attitude of never giving up, I think is critical to anyone who's going to embark on entrepreneurship. So that's an obvious one. So to move on to the slightly more nuanced ones, I think the ability to what I call move to a plan B. So many great interventions and great entrepreneurs and great businesses have come out of something else that started to actually solve a different problem. But on their journey, they realized actually that's not the problem. That's not the real pain point. That's not the gap analysis. But they've been open-minded enough and self-aware enough and sensing enough to actually spot that they needed to pivot. And some people are incredibly wedded to their idea. It's very hard. But if you can be open-minded enough, and I think, perhaps that characteristic is curiosity, to be really curious about life. Don't accept your assumption of life. And that's not necessarily, that's not necessarily science, so it's not necessarily scientific. I think to me, that is the ability to stay sensing and listening and sensing your environment and to be informed and to take advice and actually to heed advice and to be able to act on advice. A lot of people ask for advice, but they're not very good at actually executing on advice. And I've seen some incredibly smart, incredibly bright people pivot because they were able to listen. And I think to me that's critical. And I think obviously a hot topic of today is the ability to embrace technology and change, because if we're looking at the role that generative AI is playing in our lives, I mean, we're at an inflection point of a wave of technology that's as big as, the desktop computer. From the area of being analog to moving into digital, generative AI is going to have the same impact on us. And the ability to embrace technology, no matter what area of entrepreneurship you're operating in, is critical. And I think those that can embrace technology and change and embrace innovation in their business model, I think are going to give themselves an enormous competitive advantage. And I think, a lot of times embracing technology is not actually about the technology itself or the bits and bytes of the technology. It's just about fear. And to someone who can actually take that and say, I'm going to use this to my advantage, I think is really, really, really going to be critical. And I think understanding the market that they're operating in, some domain expertise is important. You'll be surprised how lazy some entrepreneurs can be. They're focused on what they're doing and they're not really delivering. And we spoke about data insights, and I think that's where the work that's being done at Stellenbosch University with the ecosystem is critical. And so I think those are just, I would say, let's not try and be too scientific. It's not really about a science. It's actually about creativity of entrepreneurship. And maybe that's a trait we're looking for, people's creativity.
Sure, that's really powerful. And I hope that, Fiona, as Ian was speaking, that you were seeing yourself in that storyline. You were seeing your resilience. You were seeing your ability to pivot to plan B. You were seeing your curiosity. You were seeing your ability to take advice and feedback. You were seeing your openness to change and innovation, and that you were seeing your desire to understand the market, because that's actually what we get from your story. So let me ask you this question, which has come from Mpo. Mpo says, thank you for a very inspiring story, Fiona. What key learnings can you share with entrepreneurs who were with you when you started, but didn't have Absa coming to their rescue? And so I think it's such a beautiful question, because We understand that we operate in an environment where there's financial constraints. But what can entrepreneurs do differently or do better in order to really attract the mentorship opportunities, the funding opportunities, and make themselves attractive to potential sponsors?
Thank you for the question. I think first thing they should do is to be out there, talk about their business, their ideas, without shame, without feeling, have that mentality of a victim to say that they don't come for us, they don't do this and this for us. Go out there, tell your story. There are a lot of people who are looking and they just want to approach you and hear what you have to say. Sometimes it's not a monetary assistant, but they just want to hear what you have to say about your business. Build yourself to a certain point where people believe in yourself and want to assist you. So one thing they should do is to develop their sums to a level whereby they're compliant.
Yeah.
I know it's not easy, especially from the rural areas where I come from. It's not easy to be compliant, but knock at the doors where you can find opportunities to be compliant. Register your business. Don't just walk around with an idea that is not recognized. Register your business on CIPC. You know, when there's a training somewhere, go and attend. It might not have a monetary value, but it has a knowledge that can help you and help you to carry yourself, to be able to grab opportunities as they come. So one thing that I did was to be out there. Ian also mentioned something about embracing technology. Now we have TikTok, we have Facebook and other social medias that you can be out there, tell your story, advertise, market yourself, so that someone can come and say, I heard your story, I want to help here and here.
Yeah.
Even if people don't approach you to say, I want help here and here, go to programs that help young people, women, and people in rural areas. Don't just sit with your idea and think you can get an assistant. Absa didn't just come to me. They saw me somewhere sharing my story, and they were able to help me. So I think it's important to just go out there, tell your story, talk about your idea, believe in yourself.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give Fiona a round of applause. Thank you so much, Fiona. So I have so many questions that have come through. I've got 5 minutes on the clock. So this is what we're going to do. I'm going to give each of you a final question, and I'm going to give each of you 1 minute because I'm going to take the last minute just to say something, right? So, Stephen, there's a question from Lebogang, and I'm bringing this particular question because there were other questions relating to disability from earlier conversation, and we really haven't had the opportunity to bring the disability angle and thread into the conversation. And Lebogang is saying, Dr. Zane, how is inclusion factored in from Absa's perspective, especially as you look at the work that you're doing on entrepreneurship? Are we thinking about entrepreneurs that might be differently abled, and how do we support them to be able to be masters of their own destiny?
I think it's at the core of what we do. It is inclusion, because without inclusion, we can never drive the diversity that we're looking to drive. We are prioritizing young people, able or disabled, whichever one, or differently abled,
Yes.
because we want young people to be entrepreneurs. We are also prioritizing women, because we believe that to expand the impact of entrepreneurship, of change, you need more women as part of the transformation, diversity, and inclusion drive that we do have. So I think, as you would have heard, Fiona, your story matters to us, and the story of all the entrepreneurs that are driving change, that have lifted their own communities out of poverty, their own families out of poverty, that are now seeing the possibility of entrepreneurship. We say, your story matters. And you will know in our report, we indicate what we do in the diversity side, what we do for women, what we do for young people, what we do just to drive social change. So, Lebogang, is it Lebogang?
Yes.
I can assure you, Lebogang, that our strategy is about every young person deserves an opportunity to learn that entrepreneurship is a career option for them.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zwane. Anastasia, a question from Tumelo. How do we get employees to be less risk averse and get them to consider pivoting into entrepreneurship. And I might add a little caveat to that, or at the very least have an entrepreneurial mindset, even within their jobs.
Yeah, so that's quite interesting. And one of the areas of research we focus on is that organizations by themselves, they need to be entrepreneurial. So this means that as a leader, so you need to be an entrepreneurial leader within your organization to create a conducive environment for entrepreneurship to thrive. So this is a bit controversial when, your employees can allow you to take risk or not, because some risks are really costly. But if it's a calculated risk that leads to innovation, so that should be encouraged. So we've seen other organizations introduce rewards, rewarding employees who have really come up with excellent innovation. And one of the important things is allowing side hustles within organizations. These days, we've realized that you can't survive with just one job. And a phenomenon that we are seeing in our country is that there's so many side hustles that are starting to mushroom. So we are pleading to all HR managers to develop policies that are really supportive of side hustles within businesses, because we learned that employees with side hustles are more creative and productive. Although others would say they have divided attention, but they are quite creative and can benefit your company.
Anastasia, I think I heard a nervous giggle. I wasn't sure if it was a supportive giggle. It sounded very nervous coming maybe from people in the HR space, but it's a refreshing thought that you're giving to us, that the benefit of being engaged in some sort of hustle actually might have benefits for the work that you do. Ian, a quick comment from you. Ali is asking, what about cooperatives? Any thoughts around how do we support cooperatives to become successful businesses that turn a profit? What are your thoughts on that?
Cooperatives?
Yes.
That's an interesting question. I think, look, again, it's about, and I think it's coming to your question of almost how does an employee become entrepreneurial? You've got to be a little bit careful not to get caught up in the formal structure. And I think a lot of those can be overly structured. I think, again, it is being able to break out with your individuality and your entrepreneurial vibes, if you want to call it that. And I think, to me, it's definitely being able to challenge the norm and challenge the standard, the state, let's call it the state and established norms. And I think so, to me, it would really be about the individuals within the organization having to be bold. I think I wouldn't, come up with some template solution just for cooperatives per se. I think you'd really have to understand the dynamics. But to me, I would, if I was someone in that situation, is try and work out what are the constraints? What are the constraints to great ideas coming? Do they encourage failure, as you've just said? That one reason why corporates often don't have very creative employees is they're also scared to fail. And then it becomes about reward. How can you change that culture? And to me, it would really come down to cultural change.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty full response. You look like you want to add to that, Stephen. Good. All right, Ali. I hope that you received that response very well. Now, as we close, I'm going to ask for the poll to be put up, and I'm going to give Fiona the opportunity to tell us what she thinks about the poll as the entrepreneur on the stage with us. And let's just remind ourselves what the question was that we put up for this particular poll. The question was, what is the single most important thing companies can do to support young entrepreneurs, Fiona? So what's the single most important thing that you think companies can do to support entrepreneurs? So let's first see what the rest of the audience has put up. We're looking up at the poll on our screen, so it's going to come up shortly. I'm going to talk through it. It's going to come up on the big screen as well. And as we're waiting for that poll, just a quick reminder to everyone that at the end of the session, you're invited to go onto the platform, the virtual platform, rate the session, 1. 2, don't forget some of the comments in the chat. We're looking for those so that we can give you more NPO listing prizes. So we're looking for your provocations, your challenges, your insights, your ideas, and we want to put those in the chat. And then that's actually going to get us to the end of not only of this session, but the end of our time with our online audience. Because when we come back from lunch, we're going to go into our facilitated breakout rooms where we're going to really do some work around case studies together. But I'll speak to you about that in a moment. Do we have the poll ready, team? If we can put that up. No, shake of the head, not yet. Okay, so let's get you to predict what the poll's going to say, Fiona. That's the best way for us to do this. So the list is long, and what I'm going to ask you to do is just choose one. And I know this is going to be hard because it's not just one thing. But which of these do you think is most important to you as an entrepreneur, right? Is it funding? Is it mentorship? Is it training? Is it networking opportunities? Is it supportive policies from government? Is it about infrastructure and broad resources? So there's the list is up now. Is it about support to research and development? Is it about access to markets, so actually being able to sell your products or your services? Is it about investing in education programs or procuring from youth-owned businesses? So to me, it looks like a fairly even spread, with the exception of market opportunities, which are almost at 20%, and mentorship, which is at 16%. Would you have put the list like this for yourself? Which one would you have given the highest percentage?
For me, I think invest in infrastructure resources.
And tell us a little bit more. Why?
It empowers the business to grow, and it's not a monetary assistant. So when you are empowered with infrastructure, you are able to be productive, and your business has potential to grow.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give Fiona a round of applause. Thank you so much, Fiona. And it's quite interesting that that's the comment you give as well, because it goes back to the earlier provocation. The courage to invest in that which is scalable.
Yeah.
The courage to invest in that which is replicable. And if I'm hearing you correctly, it's the infrastructure that builds that capability. Ladies and gentlemen, can I ask you to give my panelists a big round of applause? As they descend off stage, I'm checking my WhatsApp only to see if we have a winner, and I think we do. Thank you very much. I've got a few announcements as well. Let me start with the announcements. We found a Samsung cell phone inside the ladies' bathrooms. Oh, yay. There's the yay in the front of the room. So owner and cell phone reunited. If I can ask you, please, ma'am, to just go to the desk, the technical desk there. I think that's where you'll be able to pick it up from. And then receiving the prize for the NPO listing, I have been told by Little Bird that Jacques is in the room. Jacques, where are you? Oh, there he is. A big round of applause. You have been absolutely phenomenal. Your questions have kept me on my toes and really have made for an insightful conversation today. So thank you so much. And we look forward, if you are from an NPO, to make sure that that listing gets to you. And if you're not, to get your nominated NPO to benefit. We're really excited. Now, a couple of things before I let you go. The first of these is, again, please don't forget to share your insights tomorrow as well. We're looking for those insights. We want to give away more NPO listings. If you've joined us online, thank you so much. Thank you for staying connected. Thank you for being with us. This signals the end of our time together, but we look forward to connecting with you again tomorrow at 8:30 sharp. We'll start on time because we know you'll be waiting for us. Ladies and gentlemen, can we give our online audience a big round of applause, please? All right, so if you're in the room, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to break for lunch now. And lunch is going to be served across various stations so that we can move ourselves around. Same catering at all of the stations. So you can have lunch at the cafe, you can have it at the patio, or in the Earth and Venus rooms, which are in the passages on this side of the room. So please do enjoy our lunch. Remember also, use this opportunity to go and check out the exhibitions. Remember that in the pink passage, you can actually go into the rooms because the exhibition spills out into those rooms as well. And so our exhibitors are really excited about seeing you there. When we come back from lunch, we're going to start at 2:30 sharp. So might I please kindly request of you to start making your way back by 20 past so you can identify which of the two themes you're going to. Find your group and get settled. Remember that today we focused on learning journeys, and how we support young learners to transition from ABC to CEO. So you can join that thematic group, or alternatively, you can join the group that was focused on this conversation that we've just had, which is all about driving intergenerational inclusion with entrepreneurship. And that session is going to be facilitated by Development at Work. So they're really excited to bring some of those case studies. Now, where are the sessions? So let me quickly speak to that. The session on the learning journeys, which is where we started with the Vodacom Foundation, is going to be happening towards the back of the room. So when you come back in, if you want to go to learning journeys, it's going to be at the back of the room. If you want to go to the entrepreneurship breakaway sessions, it's going to be more towards the front of the room, and you'll see the group gathering, and then you'll be invited to take a seat and sort it from there. That's going to start at 2:30 sharp. And then it's going to run all the way up until 4 p.m. At 4 p.m., we're going to have our cocktail event, which is sponsored by Sanlam. So please stick around for that cocktail. We're really looking forward to connecting with you, to engaging with you, and to sharing some insights together. And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes my job for today. I will see you bright and early tomorrow at 8:30. Thank you so much.